Welcome to LOA Today. Walt Thiessen, Tom Wells, and Alyx King here. Today is Friday, March the 15th, 2019. It's 8 a.m. in New York, 5 a.m. in Los Angeles. It's 12 noon in London. Sydney, Australia is around 11 p.m. at night. But wherever you are in the world, thank you for joining us for another episode of LOA Today, your daily dose of happy. And we are in day 3 of the Facebook live stream blackout. We tried again this morning. Yeah. We still couldn't live stream, so not sure what's going on there. Not sure if that's tied to the big issues that Facebook had on Wednesday. Could be, could very well be, but it could be something else. We got Blue Jeans working on it. We'll find out, but in the meantime, hey, at least we can podcast, which is what the original thing is all about, right? Podcasting. That's what we do. So,
yeah, we've done that before.
And we can post it on YouTube, so that's good. It's just Facebook is just not cooperating, so... Their loss is your gain. Thank you for joining us for another episode. And Tom and Alyx and I were talking about the fact that Alyx is now the president of the Sleepless Elite. She has managed to reduce the need for sleep to such an art form that she sleeps less than, by her own admission, 10 hours a week. And we're saying, what? What? But how do you do that, Alyx? I mean, that's what we were asking you before the show, but... Here on the show, tell us, how do you do that?
I don't have a choice. I just wake up and do it. Or
Crazy.
Don't wake up and do it, you know.
Absolutely crazy.
You wake up and stay awake. And how often do you lay down and try to go to sleep?
Oh, I always lay down and try to go to sleep. I'm always in bed. I'm in bed right now.
Oh.
It's my bedroom.
This is your bedroom, yeah.
It's kind of like John Lennon and Yoko Ono back in the 1970s when they had their bed in, and they just spent all day and all night in the bed, and they had, they were recording it for posterity, and they were giving talks about peace and so forth, but they just never got out of bed.
See? Bringing it back.
There you go. So, well, anyway, last week we were working on our fiction podcast, The Grass is Greener, and we did a lot of character development. And since Tom played a really good role a really big role actually, in helping to flesh out the characters and so forth, I figured this is a good show that we can kind of build on that. Now, Alyx and I have been in contact with my sister, who shared with us a sample of how a script is supposed to look, professionally speaking. And I think we both agree that seeing that helped a lot. I counted up, you found that right, Alyx? Yeah. I counted up the words and I found that it averages about 225 to 250 words per page. So 225 to 250 words is about a minute of performance, which is a good guideline to have. And, by the way, I don't know if I told you, Alyx, you know why, it was done with such wide margins? Because
that's how a script is.
Yeah, a script is built that way, and they do it that way because they can write, exactly, notes in the margins. Yeah, so that's why they do that, which is smart.
I used to act. I know these things.
You were an actor? I didn't know you were an actor. I knew you were a comedian.
Yes, I was also an actor.
What'd you play in?
I did a lot of plays. I did a lot of movies, but I think I only had like a couple lines in movies, but yeah.
Anything we would recognize?
You did a lot of plays?
Plays were mostly in school, in show choir also. And, but movies, let me see, anything you guys seen? Not that I wouldn't think it would be in your genre. Have you seen the Dane Cook movie, My Best Friend's Girl?
I know of it. I haven't seen it.
Yeah, I was in that.
Oh, wow.
I was in The Women.
Cool. We have a star.
Anything, back in my 20s, anything that shot in Boston, me and my brother were in it.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Went after it, huh?
So cool. Now, I never knew any of it. When I approached you about doing this podcast fiction thing, I had no idea you had that background. Now, that's law of attraction. Right?
Yeah, true.
That's kind of like you and Mike meeting and not knowing you both had Asperger's.
True. Very true.
Right? I mean, that's just, this stuff amazes me. I've been doing this podcast for 6.5 years. It still amazes me. It's crazy. So anyway, Tom, you saw the character sheets we had written on each of the main characters we developed so far. So you have a good idea of what we're doing there. Alyx,
pretty good.
cued me in on what some of those interests were, because I didn't know a lot of them. I'd never heard of them. So she gave me an education about that. But today I figured we kind of off camera, we had started talking a little bit about what the first episode should block out to. How you piece it together. And actually Bill G had put together his version of a first episode, but it had a few issues, and so we kind of started again. But let's see. Do you remember exactly how we worked it out? We'd gotten everything figured out, Alyx, except for one section. We figured out how the thing started and how it ended, but there was one middle section. I can't remember what the middle section is that we got confused about. Do you remember?
It was the flashback we were trying to figure out.
The flashback. Okay, right. So, why don't you give everybody an overview of what we have so far, and especially giving Tom the overview.
Do you need to explain to any of the listeners why you're doing
Good
this?
point. Yes, we should do that. Especially since you got an email like that, right? You got somebody saying, "Wait a minute, why are you even doing this?" Right? That's what somebody.
Well, they didn't know. They say, "I didn't get the point at all of Friday's podcast." That's what she said.
So yeah, let's clarify that, because it's a very good question. What we're trying to do here is to create a fictional story, and we're doing that because we want to find new ways to reach out and find more audience for LOA Today. I actually have long envisioned LOA Today to be more than just a talk radio kind of a thing where we just talk about law of attraction. I've envisioned it as, in the long run, becoming a network with a variety of different shows on it. And the reason I like the idea of creating a fictional podcast is fiction. I mean, that shows up everywhere. It's in television, it's in movies, old-time radio, even some modern radio. Fictional stories are stories that people love. And so even if somebody doesn't know or understand what the law of attraction is, if we tell stories that touch their lives in a way that's very similar to what they're used to what it's just similar to the characters and them, they resonate. It's like, yeah, I've gone through the same thing that character's gone through. When we run into shows like that's where fandom comes from. Fans love shows that are stuff they can relate to. And they love stories. People just love stories. Doesn't matter that the stories are made up. They love stories. So we figured, well, that combined with the fact that there was a podcast company called, what's the name of it? Gimlet. Gimlet was created about 3 or 4 years ago by a man who was one of the creators of a PBS show, and I think I'm probably going to get the name of the show wrong. It was something like This American Life. And
I remember that show.
Do you remember that? Is that the one? Okay, so I think I got the title right. So he was one of the creators of that show, and he ended up deciding to go out on his own to do podcasting and set up kind of what we're doing here. But over the last 4 years, he and his team have created some 40 or 50 different podcasts. And they just were purchased by Spotify, which, of course, is one of the major podcast and music outlets, kind of on par with Pandora or iTunes or whatever. Spotify just bought Gimlet for $230 million. And when I heard that, I said, why aren't we doing fiction? It just makes sense, because it's a great way to reach out. It's a great way to connect with people who don't necessarily know what law of attraction is. And wouldn't it be cool if we not only created fiction, but created it with LOA components to it, like deliberately tying in, coaching and conversations and so forth that help characters who have reached, major crises in their lives to understand how they attracted those things and then what they can do to change it so they attract the stuff they really want. So actually turn fiction into a way of teaching how the law of attraction works. And in the process, we can also end up growing the characters because that's something that's really important to me. I believe that the best entertainment series are the ones where the characters don't just stay the same, but they actually grow over time. And I think history has kind of borne that out. The most successful television series over time, for instance, are the ones where the characters grow. Where the characters don't grow, they kind of die out after a couple seasons. But where the characters are growing, they can go on for sometimes decades. I mean, it's amazing how long they can go on. And then so I talked to Alyx about this in early February, and she immediately got it. She loved the idea, and that's just kind of where it started. In fact, Alyx, you're the one who came up with the idea of calling it The Grass is Greener because of the main characters' trials and tribulations as we're envisioning them. And, so it's just like one thing after another. So that's where I see. I mean, Alyx, do you have anything to add? What do you think is the important thing for people to understand about why we're doing this on the LOA Today podcast?
No, I think you nailed it.
Okay. Does it answer for you, Tom? What do you think?
What do I think?
Yeah.
Well, I'd say go for it. I don't feel like I'm a screenwriter per se, but I'm open to whatever's going on.
Well, you proved last week. You're really good at improv. You were just making up characteristics about these new characters, like it was just flying right off your tongue. So we're convinced that you should be a part of this team, regardless of whether you've done. I've never done screenwriting before. I've done fiction writing. I've never written a screenplay ever. I
went back and read some of what I read, and I said, I'm noticing how you've got to be very careful if you're writing characters that you're not crossing these lines of racial and ethnic, like political correctness. That's really tricky, because you start calling somebody, well, he's actually Mexican, and Mexican, this guy thinks this way, and I'm going, wait a minute, I better be careful, because that could offend somebody pretty quickly.
Always possible, yeah.
And that's how all these popular people today get in trouble. They say one little thing, and they realize, and people realize, oh, that's racist, and the guy might it might not be that big a thing, but it is to somebody. So,
yep.
All of a sudden, it's a serious issue.
And yet, you have to have some idea of what the ethnicity of the characters is. Otherwise, you don't have a full character. So it's a fine line to walk.
Right. And some of those ethnic situations, there is such a thing as machismo, as we were talking about with Miguel, but boy, should I really be saying that? Should I be bringing machismo into his character?
Send all of your...
I'll let you know when you're being racist.
Oh, okay.
Send all of your angry letters to Tom at lifeforyou or whatever it is .com, and he'll be able to answer them.
Write what? Write 8 letters to Tom?
Yeah, that's right.
All the hate mail goes to Tom.
There's a lot of that flying around these days.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah. So,
we'll shut down your Twitter account for the time being.
Well, luckily, I don't have a Twitter account. So.
Yeah, me neither.
Actually, I have one. I just never use it. Yeah.
Well, LOA Today has one. We actually do have one, but we don't. We tweet out when we're doing episodes. That's about all we tweet on. So yeah. It's not our biggest thing to do. Okay. Well, with that as a kind of an outline, a framework, let's go to the question I started to ask before.
Before you start, hold on. I have to clear something up for you.
Oh, okay.
Yesterday on your podcast, you were talking with Steve.
Yep.
And someone asked you a question about what's Pi Day.
Yes, we have an answer on that, too. Somebody beat you
to
it.
Because I was like... Okay, because I was typing it in the comments on YouTube, but I was like, I don't know when he's going to read.
Oh, maybe maybe you were the one who commented. I saw a comment and I responded to it, but I didn't see who it was from. So maybe that was you.
That was me.
Okay. Yeah, I answered. Thank you very much for clearing that up. Now I understand what that is. But I mean,
yes, it's pretty simple.
The things that people come up with, pi being March 14th, 3/14, 3.14. Like, okay, right. It just reinforces for me there are a lot of people in the world who have nothing better to do than to say, oh, wait a minute, this is the same thing as pi.
I started getting hungry when you said it.
Is that right? Okay.
It's also got a third part to it because in the supernatural world, one of the main characters loves pie. So in supernatural world, Pi Day is like a huge day.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Do they eat pie only on March 14th?
Yes, we make supernatural pies. We only eat pie. It's a thing.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for clarifying that. Appreciate that. I'll pass it along to Steve, too, in case he didn't get that message. But So anyway, I'm going to try one more time. Alyx, give us a summary of what we've thought of so far for the first episode, if you can piece together what we talked about the other day.
Okay. So, Nance has met this guy, Ronald, whatever. I think she calls him Ron.
That's okay.
No one goes by Ronald.
Ronald McDonald does.
This is true, yeah, but he's just a clown.
Well, so is Ronald, so. Anyways, So Ronald is married, but Nance is not aware of this at the time. She thinks this is a serious relationship. She has full trust in this guy. She has brought him home to meet her daughter. Everything's fine. And then the daughter is like, "Oh, Ron, can I use your phone? Can I play games?" And ends up, now see, I might want to change this, but let me tell the story as is right now. So she grabs his phone and starts playing with it and ends up FaceTiming his wife. And as the picture comes up and the wife goes, "What time are you coming up?" "Oh, who are you?" And Lana goes, "Who are you?" And Ron hears his wife's voice on the phone, so he runs for the phone, and then there's an argument. An argument happens between Ron and his wife, and now Nance is in the background figuring out, oh my God, this guy's married. Then she has a flashback to either a time where Ron had solidified the relationship to be what she thought it was, or a flashback to another relationship where she found out the guy was married. So
that's pretty good, right there. I mean, and this is just the first half of episode 1.
Yeah,
I mean, things move along pretty quickly here.
Yes.
So this turns into a big fight between Ron and Nance. Lana, I think I wrote Lana runs off to her room to avoid the drama. Lana avoids the drama. That's got a nice rhyme to it. But she's also devastated because she had started to connect to this guy. So now she's going to start exhibiting symptoms of somebody who feels like she's disconnected from everybody.
Yeah.
Now, we'd also talked about Lana having trouble at school. Do we start playing that theme yet?
I don't think in the first episode we should. I think maybe in the second or third, we flash. Right. She gets dropped off at school, and then Nance gets a phone call. Your daughter has been suspended for punching a boy in the face, and these are the things. And then goes to the principal and these are the things we need her to do before she can come back to school. And that's when we meet the therapist, and then the therapist suggests that Nance should see a therapist, and maybe we go on from there.
Right.
And then that's when we get into, slowly, I think the therapist should start dropping hints of law of attraction, and then as the therapy goes on, she should say, "You know what? I have someone you should talk to in addition to me." And that's where the life coach comes in. Ah.
Okay. So, yeah, I think you're right. Episode 2 has to be about Lana and the kid at school and meeting up with a therapist. But before we get to that, let's finish up the overall 5,000-foot view of the first episode, because we need to have the conflict and the crisis. Now, the conflict, it's kind of pretty clear what that is. That's Nance has discovered that she's involved with a married man. That's definitely a conflict. that qualifies.
A little bit.
So the next question is, okay, that's the conflict or the crisis. What is the cliffhanger?
The cliffhanger is the fight, because the fight is we only get to see half the fight.
So,
the FaceTime fight. So
tell me what it is that the audience. What's the question that the audience is waiting to answer, and that they're not going to get the answer to until episode 2? Because that's what a cliffhanger is.
How's Ron going to get out of this one?
Okay.
And is Nance going to stay?
Yeah. Okay. So that means we're developing a psychological thing going on in Nance, which is she's got information that the guy is married, but she's still trying to figure out some way to make the relationship work.
Yep.
Okay.
Because Ron's smooth. He's going to be able to talk himself out of this one. He's like, well, me and my wife are separated. She lives upstairs, I live downstairs. We only talk about the kids. That type of situation. So it makes it seem like Nance is really where his focus is. And in reality, he's still married.
So, Tom, I'm going to go to you next because you're the life coach. why is it that Nance thinks that it's worth pursuing for her to try to repair this extremely broken relationship? Why does she want to do that?
Ooh, a lot of reasons. There's something in her past that this is giving her some kind of a payoff that she gets from hanging into a difficult situation, most likely because she was modeled that somewhere in her own family of origin, where she saw her own parents play out of something similar.
Which we did describe. When we made up the character sheets, that was one of the characteristics that we described about Nance on her sheet. Because if I remember correctly, I'm going to go look at it now, Nance's parents had also had problems with cheating. And I don't think we described the fact that her father had cheated. I don't know if we did. We really described anything about how the mother reacted to that. Did we? Can't remember that
no,
we did.
didn't.
No, I didn't think so. So it's still kind of undefined why all that happened. But so what are you saying, Tom? Are you saying that Nance is trying to repair the relationship that her parents couldn't repair?
She's trying to get love from someone who might not really be available, as her father wasn't really available. And she watched her mother do the same thing with her father, try to always get love from him, but he really wasn't capable of giving it. But he acted like he was, but he was really hadn't done his own emotional work, and so he was really not available. So she only learned to go after men who were really not available.
Does this have to do with the fact that she's a flirt? Because that was one of the major characteristics that we came up with for her. Flirting is her understanding of how a relationship works. She doesn't really understand
because
anything
she's only seen relationships that are truly not deep, truly not intimate. Her attachment style that she created was based on what she saw with her own parents. That's as deep as she ever saw it go. And so she's still playing that out, because she doesn't know anything else to do. And it seems, she got the message from her mother that's how you, that's what you go for. Because her mother, was staying safe by going, by staying in this relationship with her father, which was never really giving her mother what her mother needed. But she could see that her mother was always, always really unsatisfied, but she couldn't understand why. I don't know. You could come up with a lot of reasons how that played out. You got to just, I guess, make it up as you go.
Because even though kids tend to mirror what their adults parents did, often on the negative stuff as well as whatever positive stuff there is. Despite the fact they tried to mirror it, they don't necessarily know how to improve it. So what they'll try to do is they'll say, well, I won't behave that way, and they'll try to go in the opposite direction, right? So the more they try to go in the opposite direction, the more that they create the same situation. The same thing, exactly. They're vibrating. There's a law of attraction, because they're vibrating with the very thing that they don't want, and so they create more of it. Because they keep focusing on it, yeah. Well, yeah, and in her case, you're saying, which is true of a lot of people, she doesn't know anything else to do because she has never really been modeled what a healthy relationship would look like, where there's real intimacy, because she had this pseudo-intimacy that she saw in her parents. And so, unfortunately, that's what she's playing out until she gets the wake-up call of creating on the outside a projection of this that's painful enough for her that'll cause her to finally want to get help, to want to change. Because she'll say, this is absurd. I can't keep on. I'm losing my daughter, and I'm not getting the satisfaction I need from a real relationship. Why did I attract a guy again who's not available? The ideal story would be she's done this more than once. Right. I don't know how we're covering that, but. Well, we started to cover it with the idea of the flashback. Flashing back to, this is the same thing that you went through with the previous married guy, Christopher, or whatever his name is. And wasn't she with Miguel?
But Ron isn't the first guy after Miguel.
Okay. So
Like,
Miguel was her previous husband. This guy
Right,
Miguel,
right.
Yeah.
the electrician.
Yeah, they were together long enough to have a couple
And-
kids. They married when they were right out of high school, had a couple of
Yep.
kids, and then the relationship fell apart.
So clearly he wasn't really available for intimacy either, because he had pretty heavy-duty concepts about a woman's place in a marriage that
Right.
that left him distant, because he drew a line at a certain point about what was possible for intimacy. And she was attracted to that for a while, but eventually she got pissed off because he wasn't really available, and he kept putting her in a box. And now she found a guy that she thinks is available, but once again, her inner vibration is really such that she can only attract men at this point, because she hasn't done her emotional work, because she doesn't even know there is emotional work to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's creating external situations that are mirroring back her internal emotional state. And now she's got Ron. And so she'll wake up eventually to the realization that he is married and this is not going to probably work out. And then she'll feel the pain of that. But the pain this time will be worse than it was with Miguel, because she's creating this thing again. And it's,
So
But she's not going to break Ron until she sees the therapist, and the therapist makes her realize, okay, you're in an unhealthy relationship.
that would make sense, yeah.
So the question that still is unanswered for me is, we were talking about how the child or the son or daughter will try to do the opposite of what the parents did and end up doing the same things what the parents did anyway. What I'm seeing
Right.
so far is that Nance is just simply doing what the parents did anyway. How does she do the opposite? We need to have something where she's actually doing the opposite. She's trying to shut down what her mom and dad were doing, and then she ends up doing it anyway.
I think you got to get clear on what her mom and dad were really doing. But she's, I think in the sense of the opposite, you could say that she's determined to have a deep relationship. And so that's why it didn't work out with Miguel. She said, wait a minute, this is what my mom and dad did. And they stayed together forever. And it was horrible because they weren't really in love. They were acting like they were in love. And now, she's been looking for a guy, and she thought she found it in Miguel, and he just, was wonderful, she thought. And then he had these actual limitations on how deep he could really go with her. And she thought, well, this is not going to work. I want a real relationship. So she found Ron, and he really seemed like he could do it.
So the opposite part is that she perceived that her parents didn't actually try to make their relationship work. It just kind of broke and just stayed falling apart. She's going to take this broken relationship. She's going to make it work, because she's going to do better than her parents did. Even though it's a relationship that really can't work. It's based on lies. But she's going to make it work anyway.
Right.
She's determined to have a relationship that has real intimacy, because she definitely felt her mom and dad didn't really love each other. Why the hell did they stay together? You've heard of so many kids who say that about their parents. You know, and they give their parents all these kudos when they finally decide to divorce. They said, God, you should have left him 20 years ago, Mom.
Yeah.
And so this is the same thing where she felt for years in that family that, why are they together? I hate this. They don't really love each other. So then she determined at an early age, maybe when she was 7 or 8, which is often when kids make their biggest life decisions that change their whole life, she said, I will never be in a relationship I'm faking it and I'm hanging in there for the sake of the relationship when it's not even there's no real love. She says, I'm going to have real love. So when she thought she found it with Miguel, she was so shocked to find out eventually that he couldn't go deep enough. He drew a line at a certain place when, because he had these expectations of her being a certain way in the relationship. So then she left him and went to look for the real love and found Ron. And now she's going to have this huge wake-up call that he's not available either, because what she's actually doing is running from what she had in her family of origin, which actually was very painful for her to be in. So she's vibrating with that. I don't want that. I don't want that. I don't want that. And that's attracting it. It's making it come to her.
It also occurs to me that what she's really doing, so she doesn't really know what a true deep relationship is like. She's doing it based on what she thinks she knows. What she thinks she knows is that a deep relationship is based on flirting, because that's the characteristic that we were talking about. So because
that
Yeah.
and
She's shallow.
right,
And
exactly.
of course, attracting someone who's also shallow.
Right. Yeah. So when she's doing when she's trying to build a deeper relationship, she's trying to build a relationship where the flirting is going on constantly. And Miguel wouldn't do that. Miguel was interested in her being in the traditional second fiddle role, and you don't do flirting in that situation. Well, that's why she lost interest in him. That's why she went on to the next guy who was a married man who was willing to flirt with her, and Ronald was willing to flirt with her. Well, Ronald hasn't given up on flirting with her. So that tells her, then this relationship can still get deep.
I also
Yeah, she
feel
doesn't
like
know what a deep
What's that, Alex?
relationship looks like.
What's that, Alex?
Go ahead, Alex.
sorry, I was gonna say I also feel like in Miguel and Nance's relationship there was a money aspect to it because she's a talent agent, so she makes more money than him, and because he has these specific roles in which males and females are supposed to play in a relationship,
Right.
that kind of broke him because he wasn't bringing home as much bacon as she was.
Yeah, he's not the breadwinner now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, plus his attachment therapy and his family of origin was such that he didn't really see real intimacy either, because he saw this traditional thing where his father put his mother in a box and treated her in such a way that, he only saw relationships go so deep. So he, of course, attracted Nance, who couldn't go that deep, and they both thought they were in love and they were doing something different than their parents, but they weren't. Miguel didn't even, I don't think he even realized what intimacy was. I mean, I don't think either of them do.
Right.
Because if you've never really been modeled it, you might, in your soul, that there is something more, but you haven't been modeled it. So your attachment, what's they call that? Your attachment style is such that you can only take it as far as you saw your parents take it.
Yeah.
That's what the theory
and you
is.
act on the basis that is what a deep relationship is, because that's what you know.
Yeah. And but you're assuming that you're going to do better than your parents because you've seen that you don't want what they had, but that's because that's your focus. You can't help but recreate it.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. But the way life works, it'll constantly cause growth to happen. So the principle of projection says that they will project into their reality the necessary situation that will cause the healing to take place. So you could say the relationship could work out with her and Ron, and the healing could take place in that, or it would just be another, wake-up call for Ron and Nance that, no, you're barking up the wrong tree. You've got to do your inner work before you're going to attract somebody that you can really have this intimacy with.
I'm not sure that,
and that's where the therapy comes in. Huh?
I'm not really sure that the first option's available just because Ron's already married. If he wasn't married, I could see that option.
Well, no, only unless he realized that he really isn't in love with his wife. He really is in love with Nance, and he's going to go ahead and leave his wife, and they're going to really go for it or something. You could make up that story and make that work.
No. There's no happy ending.
I don't see that one working at all. Yeah, I don't see any way to make that work.
Well, it wouldn't necessarily be happy ending. It could be.
Don't get a happy ending.
They could struggle. They could struggle for the rest of their lives too.
And that's season 45. So
that's season 45. But we're trying to grow the characters. We're trying not to stagnate the characters. That's stagnation.
Right.
But you see all kinds of things on television.
Well, that's true.
Yeah, that's true.
We're trying to rewrite the formula
while breaking up a happy home.
That's right.
Yeah.
That just doesn't work.
If we do it the way Hollywood does it, what you do is you bring in, you have to bring in something like a murder or something. You got to bring in something really horrible that happens, and and then it goes off in that direction. So. So the least of your issues is attachment therapy problems. It's now the daughter's been kidnapped by Anyway,
this is where we start getting into soap opera territory.
Well, or most television series that I've watched, they They take it out of the finely tuned, really interesting human relationship type of things, and they throw in drama, crisis, crisis, you know.
Exactly.
That's what I don't like about a lot of shows. I used to watch some pretty good ones on HBO, and then they started doing that to every show. They would have to make it so dramatic that you just said, oh my God, that's just like stretching it so far, you know.
Exactly. Well, that's why I think we're on the right track. We're on the right track when we're talking about growing characters and having them develop over time and improve and get healthier and so forth, because that's, I think, what makes a better series. I mean, there are lots of series, don't get me wrong. There are lots and lots of series where the characters don't grow, and you can just have endless numbers of crises. I mean, these just go on forever. But
plus, if you want to teach, what do you want to teach?
Well,
right.
Exactly. Yeah. And what we want to do is we want to teach it, or at least I want to teach it without it making it look like we're teaching it. I want it to feel natural.
Yeah.
You're telling all your listeners that. Yeah.
Well, this is the making of. I mean, this is like on a DVD. You get the DVD that has the movie, and then there's the making of. This is what we're really trying to do with the show. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's cool. Some people probably like watching this, listening to this.
Right. So, all right. Well, then I think we have a kind of a basic idea of what episode 1 looks like. The crisis is the fight. The cliffhanger. How do we define that? That it was. Will they be able to stay together? What was? No, it was whether. What did we say the cliffhanger was? I don't think we have a clear idea.
How's Ron going to get out of it, and will
how's
she
he going to
stay?
get out of it, and will she stay? Oh, okay, that's good. Yes. All right. So with that as our crisis and then our cliffhanger, let's start mapping out episode 2, because we can now, between shows, we can take that and we can actually start writing the scenes for episode 1 and get that going.
Are we going to have commercials?
Yep.
Yeah, there will be. Yeah. And actually, well, the model that I have in mind is a combination of commercials and subscription. So, for everyone who doesn't want to pay for a subscription, you can hear the show, but you hear it with commercials. If you want to avoid the commercials, you pay like $1 a month or something like that, and you can get it without the commercials.
Yeah. Because I was just picturing that where they break for the commercial is where his wife shows up on the FaceTime, and he's running for the phone, right? And then it goes to the commercial, right? Yeah. And then when it comes back, what does it come back to, Alyx?
Episode 2.
I see. That's the end of the episode. Yeah, that's a good place to end the episode. I see. Of course. Yeah, I see. That's the cliffhanger, right?
Yeah, she wants to combine.
The cliffhanger means the end of the episode.
Right.
She wants to combine the crisis and the cliffhanger in this case.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's pretty.
I definitely want to watch the second one.
Exactly, right?
What happens when he goes over and gets that phone?
So how do we start the second? I think we don't actually start the second episode with what happens immediately after that. I think we start in another way, and then we come back to the fight.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And maybe the way it starts is Lana at school.
Yeah. Well, also we have to, get Miguel and MJ in there somewhere.
Yeah,
so.
they have to come in somewhere in this episode. You're right.
How could the audience not want to know what happened at that moment?
Oh, they do want to know.
That's why they're sticking around.
But you're not going to show them until you're not going to show them the actual footage.
We don't know when we're going to show it. That's what you're waiting for.
Uh-huh.
Now, what I'm intending is that we show it within like the first 10 minutes, but we don't start off right off the bat.
Yeah. Yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I'm thinking we take advantage of the fact that we just started episode 2 to start laying out the secondary theme, which is Lana having trouble at school. And now this becomes an underlying second issue with the fact that she just discovered that this substitute father is just as much of a cheater as the previous guy was. And so now she's got one more abandonment issue going on. And in the process of dealing with that abandonment issue, we find out that's why she's really running to her room. That's why she wants to avoid this drama, because this is also playing out in her head. This is exactly what she went through at school. I mean, what'd you say she did? She punched out a kid at school? Well, she probably punched out the kid because the kid was behaving in some way like the the bad married man was in the previous relationship, or even the way her father was treating her, one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
He was
Or
acting
maybe
like
he said something about her father or
could be
her mother or what.
something like that. Yeah, but ultimately she's acting out on it, and it's a mirror kind of what she's experiencing now that her mother and Ronald are in the middle of a big fight.
That would make sense, that it's a mirror.
Yeah.
Yep.
So what happens?
So
Some little boy says something to her that
probably
puts her in
something
a box.
something machismo, something that cues the same kind of thing that her father cues. Like, oh, this is this is another
Like
case
they're
of
playing a game and he won't let her play because girls can't play.
because girls can't play.
Sport.
Yeah,
Yeah.
something along that
So she
line.
punches him.
Right. So then we
but he had been nice to her before, and she thinks that everything's just going to work out. Then all of a sudden he turns on her and said, "You can't do that. You're a girl," or something.
Right. Right.
And she goes, "I can sew."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because that tapped into her daddy issues.
Right.
Yeah.
So she punches out the kid, and now we flash back to the fight from episode 1, which is now breaking out into a full-fledged fight. And now we start to answer the question, well, how'd you phrase it? How's Ron going to wiggle out of this?
Yep.
And is Nance going to stay?
Mm-hmm.
And is Lana going to be watching the whole thing? Is she going to be there in the house when they do? I guess she is because
she's in the
room.
room.
That's when he picks up the phone. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's when the fight would have to have happened, most likely.
So she's going to probably think that this is her fault because she's the one who accidentally FaceTimed.
Yeah, that happens a lot.
This is true.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they blame themselves.
Yeah.
We blame ourselves when we're kids because we want the family to work out, and we've got that innocent love that says, "I'll support these people because that's how I get love." Mm-hmm. And that's what you naturally come into this earth wanting to make things beautiful because that's in our nature. But you're getting hooked up with dysfunctional people so that you end up playing into their dysfunction.
Well, that and, Lana's getting the attention from Ron that she doesn't get from her father. So now she's like, oh my God, I've ruined everything.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she was hoping, it just looked like she was going to get what she didn't get from her dad because Ron doesn't have a machismo thing going on. He doesn't have putting women in a box as much. He seems really sincere and a really good man.
Yeah, that's his redeemable quality.
He just has his attachment therapy his attachment style is that he hooked up with his wife with this ruthless dedication that he won't leave her no matter what because the love that he gets is by hanging in there. Mm-hmm. Even if it's not working out, he hangs in there. Mm. Obviously, something about that relationship he has is dysfunctional too.
It's probably a mommy relationship.
Mm.
In other words, he's married to a woman who behaves in the role of his mommy and takes care of him like his mommy, and he doesn't want to give that up under any circumstance.
Mm-hmm. Because otherwise, he would have moved out into a bachelor pad a long time ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, he doesn't want to be alone, but his only real attachment he can relate to is the one he had with his mother. So he's recreating it with his wife now. Mm-hmm. And he feels very insecure to leave that because he wasn't modeled a father who had his own life. Mm-hmm. Anyway, this could get very complicated.
They usually
all
do.
All the different families, right? But you wouldn't show that in an actual television drama, would you?
Right. These are just things that come into play in therapy
and in dialogue.
Well, and in understanding the character, because if you're playing a character, when I took acting, the acting style I was taught was you learn to think in your head all the things that person would actually be going through based on what their real life was like, but that's never shown in the actual play.
Right.
But the character has to know it,
Mm-hmm.
what their whole character's life had been like and all that. So,
and that's also part of
to act the way they act.
That's also part of script writing. The script writer's goal is to start drawing these things out slowly over time, so that it becomes clear to the audience that Ronald does have a mommy issue. You don't actually say it up front. It just over time you get a sense of it.
See, yeah. Truly,
right?
Truly.
Like,
yeah.
oh wow,
right.
he's always going to that same pattern over and over and over again.
Yeah, it's true. Even if a person's just in the actual series for a little bit, they have to have ideally they should have a fully developed character. If they don't, the critics notice that and they go, characters were not very well developed.
Critics.
You know what? I don't really care all that much because back in the day, it used to be that if the critic didn't like you, you were dead. Today, it's not true anymore. I mean, look how many films on Rotten Tomatoes have great audience ratings and lousy critical ratings. Clearly, the audience is not paying any attention to what the critics are saying.
They just like the story or not, huh?
And clearly, the critics are really out of touch with what the audience wants.
Yeah.
Critics are more sophisticated about what they're looking for because they've studied drama so much, whereas a lot of the audience is good. I don't know, it's okay with me. Right? I mean, the audience is easier to please.
I don't know. I think it's more that I think it's more that critics today are different from the critics of yesterday. Today, the critics are about what do I, the critic, like, and that was certainly true back in the day. But back in the day, there were at least some critics. I'm thinking of like Roger Ebert and Gene Siskel, for instance, who their whole deal was, what would the audience like? Why would this work for the audience? Why would it not work for the audience? I don't think that's really true anymore. I don't think most people who are critics really care about that. What they care about is, what do I think about it? How do I like it? And if their particular views tend to match what the masses like, then they're going to be more in alignment. They're going to come up with a critical rating that's similar to what their audience is going to like. But if they don't share that, then they're going to be off. And once again, the audience isn't paying attention to them anyway, so it didn't really matter. So I don't really care what the critics say. I don't think the critics really count. I think the audience is what counts. That's just me.
I agree.
So we're going to adopt a policy that we will never read critical reviews.
I don't know whoever will have the time to write one, but I guess people are always commenting. Well, people are always making critical comments on Facebook and everywhere else.
Oh, constantly.
Right? So, yeah. Everybody's a critic nowadays.
Everybody's a critic. Yeah, that's right.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
well,
that's true.
That's how you analyze, right? Analyzing is about criticizing, literally critiquing. Cutting it up into pieces, and this is the part that's good, and this is the part that's missing. That's what people do all the time. They love that. That's just part of being part of the human experience is doing that. So I don't think we have to worry about critics because it's really just about the audience. You can count on the fact there are going to be critics. We can also count on the fact there are going to be a lot of people who are going to say this is a bunch of junk, no matter how good it is. We can count on that.
Yeah.
Well, and the opposite too.
True.
A lot of people that say this is really cool, I like it, and it won't matter what anybody else says. They'll say I think it's fun.
Well, we know that for a fact.
Anyone who's still listening to this podcast at this point today, I think is one of those people. Like, why would you listen? No.
Well, Gimlet, they sold their thing for $230 million. I listened to some of this stuff. It was crap. I mean, it really wasn't very good at all.
Well, were they doing this was it this outtake kind of stuff?
Well, no. I was listening to the actual episods that they put together. But the first one I listened to, it was called Sandra, I think. And Sandra is like, what's the voice of the iPhone? Siri. It's like Siri. Or like, the voice on Amazon or on all the different artificial intelligence voices that are out there. And what the first episode of the series is about is a woman who gets a job working for the company Sandra, and what happens her first day on the job. And when she gets on the job, she learns that what Sandra really is, it isn't a computer algorithm. It's this gigantic warehouse full of people who all take on the various topics that people ask Sandra about. That was the big reveal, and I said to myself, "Really? That's the crisis? That's the cliffhanger?" It was dumb. It just doesn't. It doesn't even work as a crisis. Like, what's the crisis? We got a dumb company. Okay, great. And that's when I realized, well, shoot, if that's what they can write, hell, we can write something that's better than that. We haven't even done this before.
Right.
Yeah, everybody's jumping in throughout the world into some kind of an art form, everything from dancing to singing to screenwriting to acting, at wherever that level they're at, and giving it a go, right?
In fact, I saw an article by a woman who described herself as an avid podcast listener. And she was critiquing things like the Gimlet purchase by Spotify, because she identified quite correctly, I think, that what Spotify is trying to do is to corner the market on all of those Gimlet series. And, so if you want to hear those series, you have to become a Spotify subscriber, similar to what Netflix does. Netflix creates their own series, right? So you have to be a Netflix subscriber in order to get those series. That's what they're trying to do. And she was criticizing that, saying, well, if that's what everybody ends up doing, that's going to shut out the independent podcast maker, because they won't have that big outlet. That's what her argument was. She said, and she even described how she likes hearing podcasts that sound like they were recorded in a closet, that don't sound like they were recorded in a soundproof studio, that are rough on the edges, and they weren't put together professionally. She likes that. She likes that. Mm-hmm. That makes it more real for her. And I read that. I said, "Shoo, we got this in the bag."
Because we sound like we're doing it in the garage.
Exactly.
Or our bedrooms, right?
Right.
Our living rooms. Well, Walt, you're in an office, I'm in a living room, and you're in a bedroom. There you go.
Well, my office is actually a second bedroom.
Oh,
we just don't have a use for it as a bedroom, so I use it as an office, but it's still a bedroom.
Yeah. I use my living room as an office.
So I figure
I use my bedroom as a living room.
You do? Okay. So I figure we're right in the swing of it. We're the perfect kind of podcast for her. So if we can reach her and other people like her, we'll do real well. So
yep.
That's my theory, and I'm sticking to it.
All right.
Hey, while we have a few minutes left, I want to make sure I remind people. I've been trying to do this more and more regularly. And Alyx, if I miss this on any of the shows that you're part of, because you do 3 of the shows with me per week, remind me to do this, okay? But if you're not yet a subscriber, what are you waiting for? You want to get in on this while you can get in as a free subscriber. No, seriously. You're always going to be able to be a free subscriber to the podcast where we're talking about the law of attraction and so forth. And when you do that, you get some pretty cool stuff. I mean, today we're talking about the development of this fictional podcast, but we're also going to be just doing the stuff we've done all along, where we bring in interesting guests and we talk about, questions that people raise from the live stream audience when we're able to live stream, all the good stuff that we've been doing all along. So, get all that, because it all comes right to your device when you become a subscriber. Just go to the homepage, allthewaytoday.net. We've got it now set up so that it will actually detect what kind of device you've got, and it will show you the exact button you need in order to click and become a subscriber. So we've actually advanced it a little bit, made it a little bit easier to use. And then once you've subscribed and all the episodes are flowing to your smartphone, make sure that you're commenting on it out in social media. We were talking about social media earlier, right? Well, that's where all the critiquing happens. So become a critic. Do the critiquing. Hopefully you're going to say that you like the show, but whatever, just put out there that you've been listening, and here's what I think about it. And in that way, you help get the word about your daily dose of happy out to many more people. So subscribe and share. That's the message I want to get out there. And with that in mind, we got about 5 minutes left. So let's see. We've got the first episode mapped out. We got part of the second episode mapped out. We didn't really decide what happens. How does that fight conclude? Does the fight conclude in the second episode? And if so, where's it going?
The fight does conclude in the second episode, but Ron's going to be able to talk his way out of it.
So
and make her believe.
So Nancy's committed to trying to make this broken relationship work.
Yeah.
Boy, she is sick puppy.
She doesn't feel like the other woman. She feels like she's like, I'm not a side piece. No, that can't be.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I think that makes sense. Now we also talked about the therapy starting to come into the picture, and it starts off with the school recommending therapy for Lana.
Mm-hmm.
Is it during this episode that the therapist also ends up recommending therapy for Nance?
No, not during this episode.
Not during this one, so that's too early for that.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess then what we're seeing for the second half of this episode is after Nance and Ron make up,
mm-hmm.
Nance gets called into school to deal with Lana's issue. Lana is set up to meet with the therapist. And then do we see the first episode or the first therapy session? Do we see that going on?
Episode 3, I think.
Episode 3. So what's the crisis and the cliffhanger for episode 2?
Well, not every episode needs a cliffhanger.
Oh, actually, I think it does. That's what keeps these series going. There's always something that draws you back for the next one.
HBO does.
Well, I mean, I can only relate to that because I don't watch too many of the other series. I know now they're on everywhere. Amazon, everywhere has got a series. Got all these series going on. They probably all have cliffhangers, right?
Yeah, there's always some crisis, some conflict that has to be resolved.
Yeah, there has to be.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to have a conflict to resolve in episode 3. So what's the conflict going to be that we're going to resolve? That's what we got to figure out.
Probably conversation between Lana and Nance in the car on the way home from suspension.
Ah.
And I think also the crisis becomes that Lana draws a line with hating Ron, and so it, she creates a scene at the house that makes it clear that she's not going down easy in accepting Ron any longer.
Yeah.
Like her mother seems to be. And her mother's like, so that's just, that energy that her mother has now repressed of continuing to try to make it work with Ron has been displaced into her daughter, who's more, vulnerable and more real, more authentic in her feelings. And her daughter's starting to act out at home now, the thing that her mother is suppressing, that her mother and Ron are trying to suppress their thing, that they know that they're like lying to themselves, but they're not admitting it. But it pops up in Lana and her behavior towards both of them. She starts to become a rebel at home, just like at school,
So Lana is basically becoming the voice of reason in the midst of her own dysfunctionality, but she's the one who's
becoming the one who's emoting what the others are repressing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they so much want to have a perfect relationship work out, but they've been so conditioned to hang in there with things that really don't work, and Lana's too young to accept that she's going to hang in there with something that doesn't work.
So she keeps pointing out all the reasons why it's not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
Lana,
is pointing out all the reasons why it can't work between Nance and Ron. The reasons
she's acting it out.
Yeah,
she's acting.
Well,
it out.
during the conflict during the argument that she has with her mother, because like you said, the argument starts on the way home and ends up at home.
She could tell her mother straight up, like, I don't want to be with him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why do you want to be with him, Mom?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, so that kind of thing. And then when Ron's around, he's trying to make everything okay with Lana, and she's like, kind of getting in his face, saying,
"You're not my daddy."
Yeah, like why don't you go home to your wife, or something?
Yeah, that's how I was as a kid.
Yeah, were you?
Yeah,
oh, wow.
Yeah. My dad had many women, and I was the worst.
Oh yeah,
wow.
Yeah.
I'll let you write this part. I'm sure you could.
Happened to my childhood. I'll be right back.
Yeah, right.
Oh, it's amazing how often this kind of thing happens. You hear about this in the making of, right? You hear about, I did go through something similar in my childhood, and so this is kind of therapy for me and all that kind of thing. Yep.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, this is normal stuff.
Oh, also, you want to remind, Walt, the people who are watching us on YouTube to jump down and hit the subscribe button. And also hit that little bell thingy so you can be reminded every time that we do an episode.
Oh,
and
good.
Give us a thumbs up if you like this episode.
Excellent. You just did it. Thank you for making the reminder.
You're welcome.
And for those who've never done the bell thingy, how do they do that? Where do they find that?
It's right next to the subscribe button down below.
Okay. So they just hit the bell thingy, and that way they get notified every time there's a new episode.
Every time there's a new episode. Yes.
Okay. Good. Well, thank you for remembering that, first of all, and thanks for reminding our listeners how to do that, especially the ones who are listening on YouTube. That's excellent. So, now that we've completely ruined the lives of Ron and Nance and Lana, I think we can just leave it right there. And with that lovely thought,
we're going to have redeeming things happen.
That's right, yes.
Yes, definitely.
That's the good part that's happening. Oh, and before we leave, Tom, you got to tell people how to reach out to Tom, the life coach, because that's always got to be a part of this.
Well, if you want to come and work on your emotional processing, that's what I do, is emotional clearing. I'm an emotional clearing facilitator and a law of attraction coach. You can go to my website, which is YouAreJoy, YOUAREJOY. Your true nature is joy. So go to that youarejoy.com, and you can sign up for. I can give you a free hour of coaching, and then you can decide whether you would like to continue with me and continue to process your emotional life, so you can have a more wonderful life.
And do us a favor, mention that you heard about him on LOA today, so that way we know that that's how Tom got the lead. So,
yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Tom. Thank you, Alyx. Look forward to continuing this discussion next week. And Alyx, you and I have got a little script writing to do this week. Yeah. Glad to do it. And thank you to our, what was that, Alyx?
I said, yep, we definitely do.
We definitely do, no doubt. Thank you to our podcast audience as well. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.